Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for watching. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I made this Totoro themed cake, so let's get right into it. I'm going to start off by making my Totoro, so I have some gray fondant here and I've rolled that into a fat teardrop shape. I flattened that a bit against my work surface and I'm going to start pulling out the snout part. So just using my fingers to kind of create an oval shape and then just brushing the fondant down around that just to get rid of any creases I might have created or lines in the fondant. I'm making indents on either side of him for like the shoulder area, and I still want to make sure that I'm not making the indents too deep. You can see I'm really finicky. I go over it like a billion times. Don't do this, it'll drive yourself crazy. With my fondant tool, I'm going to mark in where the arms are going to go, digging in deeper at the bottom where his little paws would be. Using my balling tool, I'm going to create 2 eye sockets. And then with my X-Acto knife, I'm just marking in like a little itty bitty mouth. I know it looks like a big blob of nothing right now, but once I start adding in the eyeballs and the rest of the features, it's really going to start looking like Totoro. So I rolled out 2 white balls for either side and then a little piece of black fondant for his nose. Just trying to roughly bring the bottoms down just to a slight point. It's not perfectly oval. 2 little black balls of fondant go into either eye for the pupils and then another teeny tiny little ball of white for the catchlight. For his tummy, I rolled out some white fondant and then used my circle cutter, and I'm going to place that right below his snout, just tucking the end underneath. To create the semicircles that are going to be on his tummy, I rolled out some gray fondant and then used my circle cutter to punch out a bunch of circles, and using that same circle cutter, I'm just trimming those down. They looked a little bit pointed in the picture, so I just used my pinkies to bring the top in a bit. I added those to his tummy and just used a little bit of water to hold those in place. I will link the photo that I used below as a reference for this. For his ears, I rolled out more of my gray fondant into a snaky shape and then just tapered the ends in with my fingers. It's like kind of pointed at the top and kind of pointed at the bottom, if that makes sense. So once I had made both of those, I set my Totoro and the ears aside to dry completely. It was dry by the time I woke up the next morning. You really want to make sure that he is firm, because if you try to add him to your cake too early, he's going to lose the shape of his tummy and he's going to sink down. When he was dry and ready to go, I stuck 2 pieces of spaghetti into his ears and then just gently pressed those in. And for his whiskers, I decided to use straight up floral wire. You could get white floral wire and just paint it black. I didn't have any, and I actually didn't mind the way it looked with the silver, so I just went with that. Because this is a bigger topper, I want to make sure that he has lots of support, so I'm using a wooden dowel and inserting that into him, making sure there is enough dowel left at the bottom that it's going to go all the way through my cake and touch the cake board underneath. To get started on my cake that's going to look like a tree stump, I'm rolling out this really light brown shade and I'm draping that over the top of a 4-inch tier that I've already iced. If you need to see how to ice a cake, I will link a video below. I use my fondant tool to smooth the top completely, and then I'm placing a cake board on top of that and I'm going to flip that over. My cake was chilled for this. It is way easier. I do not recommend not chilling your cake and trying to add the fondant on at this point. Using my X-Acto knife, I'm trimming away the fondant, getting as close to the edge as I can, and then once I had gotten rid of the excess, I just flipped it back over. To get that bark texture, I've rolled out a darker shade of brown into this longer rectangular shape, and then using my pinkies, I'm going to create a couple of indents. I have some tinfoil here that I'm balling up, and I'm going to use that to create most of my texture. So I'm just pressing that into my fondant, harder in some spots, lighter in the others, making sure I get into all those grooves I created. And you really just want to make sure you're not pressing so hard that you're going through the fondant, but you can create some depth by pressing a little harder in certain areas. Once I was happy with that, I picked it up and wrapped it around my chilled cake, just making sure that the top of the fondant was meeting the edge of that light brown fondant. You want to make sure that it's coming all the way up. And then once I had wrapped it all the way around, I just cut a seam at the back so that each side met. While my cake was still chilled at this point, I used the opportunity to go back in with my tinfoil. I pressed a little bit harder just so I created some deeper grooves, redid the texture if it got smushed at all by my hands, and then just made sure the top was overlapping that lighter brown fondant. And then I also used the tinfoil to help cover up that seam that I created. To create the rings on the top of my tree stump, I just used different size piping tips and circle cutters, and then when I ran out of sizes, I just very carefully used my X-Acto knife, tried to keep it in place, and then use my turntable to do most of the work. With my X-Acto knife and my fondant tool, I went in to create some lines for the top of the tree stump that went down the side, and this is just going to create like a split wood look. To finish it off and make it look a little more realistic, I brushed the entire thing with some brown luster dust and then went deeper into all the grooves I had created. I added that on top of a 6-inch tier that I covered with blue fondant. Again, if you need to see how to do that, I will link a video below. Soot sprites, I flattened balls of black fondant against my work surface and then used my fondant tool just to rough up the edges. Added 2 little white balls for the eyeballs and then black for the pupils using my edible food marker. I added my cat bust to the front of my blue tier using a little bit of water and then just willy-nilly stuck all of my soot sprites on there, kind of framing him on either side. I added Totoro to the top and then a couple little patches of moss, and then you can see I made a smaller Totoro with blue fondant. I made him the exact same way, and then on the bottom a little teeny white guy just sans the belly and the arms and the whiskers and really everything except for the eyeballs. And this was the final result, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.